So I want to ask you, for the person who says, I have nothing to hide, when it comes to this AI technology tracking our every move, what would you say?
There are a few things that I say. One of them is don't be naive, because if you have nothing to hide today, you don't know what tomorrow is going to be like. Regimes come and go, social norms change, but your data is forever. And you actually don't know whether tomorrow you're going to be a person of interest. You don't know whether tomorrow something political is going to change and now you're the enemy. Now you're the person that they're trying to hunt down. Or maybe something happens, a law is passed and you're not okay with it. You might be okay with the status quo right now, but tomorrow you don't know if something's going to upset you and you want to push back. Suddenly you have something to hide because you're a person who is trying to disrupt power, and that makes you a person of interest. So I think it's naive to think that you have nothing to hide, just from the perspective of we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But on top of that, I actually don't think it's about whether we as individuals have anything to hide. First of all, it's about choice. It's whether we have anything we want to share. And I think we need to reframe it away from this very away from this very shameful language that suggests, oh, you have something to hide, privacy is a bad thing. I think that actually I have the right to selectively disclose what I want about myself to the world. As a living being, I have the right to live my life on my terms and to share with the world what I want. And I think that it does us all a disservice to reframe it as, what have you got to hide? It's none of your business what I've got to hide. The point is I have the right to choose. And the other thing I would say is that it's not necessarily about us. For me, it's the question of whether I want to live in a society where privacy isn't even an option anymore. Because if I'm a normal, everyday person, I may not feel like anything's really at stake, but I'm living in a society where there are investigative journalists pushing back against powerful entities all the time, revealing truths, and I benefit from those truths being revealed. I live in a society where whistleblowers are blowing the lid off bad and corrupt things happening, and I benefit as an individual from that happening. From dissidents who are pushing back, I benefit from all of these brave people in the world who are out there risking themselves, and they depend on privacy as a matter of life and death. So for me, it's not whether I personally have something to hide, it's whether I'm willing to fight for the people who are making my life better by their actions. So I think we need to stop thinking so much about us and whether it's okay for us to feed these systems because we think that they're personally affecting us. I think about this in terms of all rights. Do I care about certain corrupt political behaviors? Is it really affecting me? Well, it's about whether I want to live in a society where these corrupt behaviors are allowed to exist. A lot of the things we opt for in society, they don't necessarily affect us personally, but it's whether we want the society to function in that way or not. So we need to reframe the argument and remind people that we have a society currently where we can still have privacy, and we get a lot of amazing benefits from that because of brave people willing to push back and do hard things to keep society self-correcting. We don't want to lose that. And so for me, I don't think people should be fueling a system that continues to build this surveillance mechanism. I think that people should be supporting privacy tools. They should be supporting companies that protect their privacy. They should be supporting the narrative that, yes, privacy is important, and not trying to diminish it simply because they feel personally they have nothing to hide.
Where would the average resident start? How do you start that conversation with your local city council about this kind of technology?
I think that it's important to understand other people's value systems, because if you try to convince people of your value system, it's a really tall ask. So figure out, why is it that these entities are currently supporting the surveillance apparatus? What are they trying to gain? And from there, you can have a more productive conversation, because most of the time, they're probably thinking that they're keeping people more safe. They're probably thinking that they can have a better society by keeping tabs on people and collecting data. They can make things run more smoothly. They can catch bad guys. So understand that first, And then you can start to bring up the point that this surveillance apparatus actually does the opposite of what they intend. This surveillance apparatus centralizes control and allows a monitoring mechanism that makes individuals more vulnerable. There's a reason why we have checks and balances in society. You don't want the people that you have granted permission to do all of these things on your behalf to have an overwhelming amount of power over people. You need those checks and balances, because if we're electing these people to do things on our behalf, there needs to be some accountability. And what mass surveillance does is it eradicates that accountability. It shifts the balance of power so far away from the individual that we no longer have recourse. We no longer are able to freely associate, to support causes we believe in, to have freedom of movement, to hang out with whom we choose. And that's a really scary situation. So when you're talking to people, you don't have to dive too far into the philosophical deep end with it, but understand they're trying to protect people, and then educate them about how they're actually making people more vulnerable, and maybe suggest things that might work better, maybe suggest things that can protect people's privacy and at the same time help them do their job. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to do things that they think is part of their job description. And by showing them that you're not against them and the fact that they want to make the world a better place, you just think that there's a better way to get there that protects people. That's a good way to kind of start the conversation.
And finally, what do you foresee in the future with AI technology and surveillance? Is there any good news in this?
Absolutely. Tech is a tool. And I think we sometimes see the advancement of tech as a bad thing because it's been hijacked for things like surveillance. That's bad. The fact that we've been just fueling these surveillance industries for decades now has really created this asymmetry in society. But ultimately, tech is neutral. It can be used for good or bad. And the fact that we haven't been keeping up with the surveillance tech and also building privacy tools that protect people, that's the bad thing. So we're at a fork in the road where I think that we're at this precipice where power is about to tilt so far away from the individual, we might not be able to get it back. So we have to ask ourselves, are we okay with that? Are we just going to go along with this and only have technology that is centered around surveillance and monitoring people and controlling them? Or do we want to lean into privacy tech? I think that AI ultimately is just the ability to do powerful compute, to find patterns and do things that are beyond human capabilities and maybe supercharge us. So let's think about the things that we want to supercharge. There's a lot of vested interest in supercharging surveillance from the political spectrum, from the corporate surveillance perspective. For me, I want to supercharge people's ability to have privacy. So what kind of privacy tooling can we build around AI? Maybe we could generate white noise machines that create so much fake data about ourselves that it renders these data brokers obsolete. They can no longer sell accurate profiles on us. Maybe we can use AI to monitor our home systems so we can see what kind of telemetry is being collected, and we can learn how to block it. We can learn how to protect ourselves. Maybe we can use AI for figuring out how to structure society in a better way that protects the individual. I don't know, but I do know that it is an underdeveloped area where not a lot of people are reflexively pushing back against tech in general. But as we've seen, even if you throw out all your digital devices yourself, you can't get away from surveillance. It's in our city streets. It's in your everyday life. It doesn't matter whether you personally don't have a computer or a phone. You're still going to be monitored and tracked by surveillance. So I think that the trick is leaning into privacy technology, seeing what kind of amazing cutting edge encryption tooling is out there that we could try to incorporate into these systems to protect people. Things like homomorphic encryption, zero knowledge proofs, all of this cutting edge technology that could allow law enforcement to do their job without invading the individual's privacy. So let's explore this more. Let's lean into this technology more, and let's use tech to fight for the individual instead of exploit them.
I love those ideas. I love those. Are those being used anywhere, utilized anywhere?
I don't know. If we think about the incentives of building this stuff, there's so much incentive for people to build tooling that collects data, that monetizes data. I don't think that as many people are looking into privacy tech because there's not as much cultural support. And that's why I keep going back to the fact that if we want to make a change, we have to make a cultural shift. We have to remind people why privacy is the bedrock of a free society. We have to remind people that this is a value worth fighting for. And if we lose it, we're going to lose it forever. So I do think with a cultural shift, and the cultural shift is happening, I'm seeing more and more people waking up to the fact that surveillance is getting worse and worse and privacy is disappearing. But we need to go harder, we need to go faster, because there is a limited window where those scales are tilting too far away from the individual, and I don't think we'll be able to return to a normal state. So it's not being developed as much as we should. It should be. But privacy tooling today is so much better than it was 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, you didn't really have private email alternatives that were usable for the everyday person. Now you do. It's just a matter of choice. Like, do you want to feed the systems that are collecting your data and profiling you and selling it to countless entities? Or do you want to opt out and choose a better system and also support the industry that's trying to protect you? What you do with your money is important. Are you going to fuel the people exploiting you or the people protecting you? I do think we need to make that choice as individuals and make choices that align with our values better.
Well, I am a huge fan of yours. And I just appreciate everything you do. I love seeing everything you post. And I mean, you are really kind of at the forefront of this, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you blowing the lid off flock surveillance cameras. I think that this is a huge issue and it's underreported. And the more we can talk about this as a society, the better decisions we can make.
I agree. I agree. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our talk. But I really appreciate it. And do you have a minute for one more question?
Yeah, for sure.
How did you get into privacy? How did what was it for you?
It was kind of a bunch of different things at once. I would say that the big turning point came when I read Snowden's memoir. I was already a little bit in the rabbit hole at that stage, and I already am very interested in decentralized tech, uncensorable tech. I like the idea of power being distributed. I like the idea of individuals being empowered in their lives. I like seeing things that promote that. So I was already kind of in the rabbit hole, but then I read Snowden's memoirs and it was so shocking to me, all these things that were going on that I had no idea. And that asymmetry of knowledge, that I had no idea how the tech I was using worked, really worried me. How can I make an informed decision if I don't even know what's going on? And so my channel started like over a decade ago, but when I pivoted to privacy, it's many, many years ago now, it was really just me slowly learning about this stuff and saying, hey guys, this is what I learned. Did you know this was going on? And what was most shocking was I'd make these videos, say, like, I'd go down these rabbit holes. I think the first one was like Snowden tweeted something about, these are the privacy things I do. I don't use email. It's an inherently insecure protocol. And I'm like, what? And then he said something about, like, I don't have Wi-Fi because there are publicly accessible maps that map every, Wi-Fi access point. And I'm like, what's a Wi-Fi access point? And so I'd read these things and I'd be like, okay, well, he's tweeting this out. He clearly thinks it's important. I should learn something about this. And I remember one of the first privacy videos I did was about Wi-Fi access points. And I just dove into it, and I'm such a noob, and I'm like joining all the dots because I don't know how the internet works. I don't know how this infrastructure is built or anything. And so I'm learning and I'm trying to explain it to people as I go in this video. It ends up getting like over 1 million views because it turns out no one knew this stuff is going on. And I mentioned this website, wiggle.net, which is one of these publicly accessible maps that maps every Wi-Fi access point. It's kind of a tool that allows you to basically correlate people's movements with their Wi-Fi as a tracking tool. So if your SSID, so like Naomi's Wi-Fi or whatever I've called it, I could figure out, okay, well, which devices have been connected to that before in the past? Okay, these devices, where have those devices shown up before? Oh, what other points? Like, you can basically track, like, okay, she went to that conference, she works there, she lives there. You can basically build this profile. Anyway, the creator of wiggle.net reached out to me, and And really join the dots for me even more. They create this as a public service so that people understand how vulnerable Wi-Fi, for example, is as a tracking tool. But it turns out that every time you move around, Apple and Google, you're basically war driving for them. What war driving means is you're driving around with this receiver, clocking all of these Wi-Fi reception signal strengths. And from there, you're able to help these companies geographically map where all of these things are. We're all doing that with our personal devices. What Wiggle is just a community, funded venture that helps people understand how leaky this stuff is. But these companies that we're all using an Apple or a Google device, basically, and what they're collecting is just so detailed and far more personal than we realize. So that was kind of me diving into the rabbit hole at the start, and from there I've just kind of been plugging one thing after another in my life, and then teaching people, hey guys, this week I attempted to plug my email. Here's what I did. Here are the different platforms that I explored. Here's how they compare with privacy. This is what I learned. And I think that there's an appetite for that because tech can be really inaccessible to a lot of people. It's very intimidating. We like to set up tech things and then never look at them again. I have this fun sketch where I play the character of a router that's just covered in dust and hasn't been looked at in 20 years. Because I'm sure when you set up your internet, you were like, okay, it's done. I never have to think about this again. And so I just kind of explore all these things and teach people the upkeep they need if they want their, privacy to be maintained. And it's a rabbit hole. It's an ongoing process, but there's definitely an appetite, and people more and more want to reclaim control over their digital lives. I think people are getting sick of being exploited and having data breaches and being the victim of identity theft, having people able to just buy their location at any time. They realize it makes them more vulnerable. And so I think helping people understand how to make sure their tech works for them is a really important thing to do these days.
Do you have any concerns about schools giving iPads to kids? Because here in Arizona, one of the big things is, oh, my school district gives my kid a computer to use for the next 4 or 5 years. Are there any privacy concerns with that?
I think there are huge privacy concerns. Again, tech is not necessarily bad. Tech could be amazing. Giving a child access to the world's knowledge at their fingertips is incredible. But it's being done in a very uninformed way, where we're also handing over bloatware, we're handing over surveillance devices, we're allowing countless third parties to collect and aggregate and profile information on children. Most children have a larger digital footprint by the time their first birthday than most of us have had, that their parents have had by the time they're 25. So the data footprint that we're creating for children who can't even talk yet is incredible. By uploading photos, by allowing them to use tablets that are just harvesting data because we've just handed over apps, devices with bloatware. I do think that we need to reevaluate how we allow children to interact with technology when they don't yet have a choice, right? We're making decisions for them right now that they can't take back. We're creating a digital footprint for them that they can't undo. Maybe your child doesn't want their face to be trained on AI, facial recognition software, so that it has mapped every day of their life. And now there is no chance as an adult they'll ever be able to, evade the system. Maybe, they don't want you tweeting out every funny anecdote about them, because again, that's all being used to build profiles on them before they can even speak. And I do think that parents need to take more responsibility for the choices that they're making for their children and understand the consequences. And I don't blame parents, because again, this world is opaque. They don't probably understand the consequences of their action. So that's why I think that educating people about these consequences is one of the most important things we could do. So parents do understand that their choices matter. They do understand that the platforms they choose matter. They do understand having that camera, forward-facing camera that we've given countless apps, permission to use is being used, by apps that we're logging into. Microphones are being used to collect data from conversations. They are being used to tag information, sell it to data brokers. I think that from awareness, we can make better choices and we can set our kids up better for success instead of giving them this digital liability kind of hanging over them that's going to make it easier for them to get scammed because there's so much information about them. I think the statistic is children are like 51% more likely to be the victim of identity theft because of all of the information parents are putting about them online. It's just really easy for people to just steal their identity. And the children don't find out until they're 18 and they go and get a loan for a car or try to, get a job or a visa. They don't find out about any of this stuff. And I think parents really need to make more informed choices when it comes to introducing tech into the lives of their children.
So much to take in.